very welcome. And for the discussion this evening, we're going to be taking a look at the proposal to build a data centre in Ennis. 2 weeks ago, the IPCC published their latest report, and it points out that the window of opportunity for controlling climate change is fast running out. We're close to reaching a tipping point beyond which there will be no going back. So there is a massive onus on us to reduce our carbon emissions. This evening, I am joined by a spokesperson for Future Proof Clare. Emanuela Ferrari is one of a number of people very, very concerned about the proposal to build a data centre in Ennis. Emanuela, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Anna.
So maybe we could begin by maybe you telling me a little bit about yourself and Future Proof Clare.
Yeah, so I've been a member of Future Proof Clare for a number of years now. The organisation itself is quite new. It has really formed around the issue of the proposed building of a terminal for import liquefied natural gas, which is in fact fracked gas in Tarbert in Kerry, which it's in the Shannon estuary. So it would affect Clare as well, and the whole ecosystem in the estuary, as well as being a big climatic threat, as we will see. Yeah, this was the main issue that the group has taken on, but as the name suggests, one of the purposes of the group is to kind of guarantee that locally the County of Clare is well prepared to face the future challenges, in particular the climate change and the kind of need to switch from fossil fuel to renewables, and also the resilience of communities. So that would be the main purpose. It has collaborated over the years with other groups, in particular with XR Clare. A few years ago, when we could still demonstrate in the streets, I guess, and also with other groups, like it's part of the PPN, Clare PPN, and it's also collaborated with Clare Environmental Network, among other organisations, and on a national level as well, with groups involved in the same struggle against the importation of fracked gas and the combating climate change.
Okay, Emanuela. So perhaps you might tell our viewers that are looking in, why are you concerned about the proposal to build a data centre in Ennis? Yeah,
so where do I start? The one in
at the beginning.
At the beginning. So yeah, the Ennis data centre is just one of 100 data centres that have either been given the go-ahead or are in the process of obtaining planning in Ireland. So I guess they are a strategic part of the economic policy of Ireland. So they are facilitated in their construction. Most of them have been planned around Dublin, because obviously the infrastructure there is much more advanced. But because of the huge strain that it puts on the power grid, they've started kind of relocating them to other areas. So this one is in Clare, just to take the pressure off the concentration of data centres around the area of Dublin. So our concern is that this strategy, just to put it in a nutshell, is just not compatible with, first of all, the climate and biodiversity crisis that we're experiencing, and with the obligation that the Irish government has taken on to face the crisis. So the energy, when people think of data centers or data, they think of, something intangible that exists up there in the air, in the cloud. We think about our phones. We don't see the material impact of these data centers, but they're very much connected to the infrastructure and to resources. So they have a huge size, and they consist of a huge amount of servers. And to be fueled, and also in order to kind of maintain the right temperature of these data centers, they have to consume a huge amount of energy and a huge amount of water. So this one in particular it will consume 200 megawatts of energy, and megawatts are very abstract again, but just to put it in comparison, it would be the same amount of energy of 210,000 homes. And we've calculated that that would be the equivalent of 3 counties, Kerry, Limerick and Clare combined. So that's only at peak times, but we use data a lot and more. So for example, during lockdown, the amount of data that has been used has really multiplied because people were kind of glued to their screens, and it's become part of life, not an inevitable part of life, but it's become very much the normality. So anyway, in order to where all this electricity will come from, so 40% it will come from the grid, and 60% it will come from a power plant that is inbuilt in the data center. So it's not just servers. The data center will consist of a gas-fueled power plant. Now, gas, it's called natural gas, but really is a fossil fuel. It doesn't generate many emissions when it's burned, but if we account for the upstream emissions or the leakages of gas that are produced during the life cycle of the extraction of the gas, the processing, the transport, they are much more, I think it's much more, it's the equivalent polluting as burning coal. And that is because it produces methane, which is a greenhouse gas, which is 87 times more powerful than CO2. So that's a big problem. And this is not taken into account at the moment of presenting gas as a transition fuel. It's not. It contributes hugely to CO2 emissions. So the Irish economy, sorry, go ahead.
So if I could just pause you there, to give myself and our viewers time just to reflect for a moment on what you've been saying, because you've just provided us with so much information, it's kind of difficult to absorb it. So what I'm hearing loud and clearly is that this proposed data centre is going to consume the equivalent amount of energy of 3 counties, and that 40% of this energy will be generated by renewable sources, but that there will be on-site generators using natural gas to meet the energy demands.
Sorry, 40% will come from the grid. The grid, the kind of national grid, is not wholly renewable. Only a small fraction, I think 10 to 30% of the energy on the grid is produced by renewables. So that would be whatever is burned to make electricity. So the percentage of renewable in the context of the data center is really, really small.
Okay, and you mentioned there then that, and we do know that renewable energy has peaks and troughs. So if we're relying on wind as a source of energy, of course, when it's windy, the electricity is generated, but on a calm day like today, there's very little generation. So they are relying then on gas. But Ireland's main gas field, which is the current gas field off the coast of Mayo, is coming closer and closer to end of life. And you mentioned that your group, Future Proof Clare, was originally set up to campaign against the proposal to build a gas terminal in Tarbert on the Shannon estuary for fracked gas that's been imported from the United States. Now, this is me kind of putting 2 and 2 together, and I may be wrong, but is there a chance that there's a connection between the two? Between the proposal to bring in fracked gas from America and have it refined in Tarbert? Do you think that there might be a possibility that they're thinking of using this gas then in the data centre in Ennis, given that the gas field off the coast of Mayo, which is our principal gas field, is coming closer to end of life? Absolutely,
yeah, that's exactly it, Anna. So Shannon LNG has been application, like we've been with other organizations, especially, has been kind of fighting their application for 8 years or 15 years, but yeah, a long time. So the last application was quashed in court by a group called Friends of the Irish Environment on an environmental basis. But New Fortress Energy, which is the developer behind Shannon LNG terminal, has just put in, it's just days from lodging another application with onboard Planola. So in their new application, they actually integrate several data centers. So it's obviously tied because, I mean, you know, if as a country we want to wean ourselves from fossil fuels, there's a lot of potential for renewable energy, but it's just a matter of how this renewable energy is used. So if it's, you know, if it's meant to go to houses and hospital and public services, yes, there is a potential to completely switch to renewables and meet the kind of emission reductions goals. But if we are building 100 data centers, which will suck up about a third of all energy produced in Ireland by 2030, then it becomes a fantasy. There's no way to completely switch to renewables and reduce emissions while increasing the amount of energy that is consumed in Ireland so much. To the extent that data centers will do. So of course, like, you know, gas is less controversial than coal, is considered green. As I said, it's not green at all. It has huge environmental impact. Even, you know, in the stage of fracking, because most of the gas that is produced today, it's fracked gas. So it has a huge environmental impact, but it is touted as a transition fuel in order to sustain this kind of unhindered economic growth, which is the government strategy for the future. So yeah, we think that it's completely unsustainable. It's just unrealistic. And I mean, a lot of in the planning, there is an ambition to kind of switch to renewables or you know, kind of carbon neutral or renewable sources of energy like biomass, biofuels, blue hydrogen, but those are not uncontroversial from an environmental point of view. They will still need a huge amount of resources to be produced, to be sourced, and they are not proved to be completely green. So it's really a big bet that the government has taken. And we think that it's a very short-sighted strategy, especially considering that you know, the environmental conditions will change. Even the consumption of water is a problem. We know that the weather patterns will change. And I mean, if you know, half of the energy half of the water that would be consumed in Ennis will go to the data center, then you know, we're going to have a problem in the future. So yeah.
Okay, so there are two issues then that are kind of coming together to form the perfect storm. The first one is, of course, that we've all fallen in love with our mobile phones, and I have to put up my hands and say, you know, I'm one of those people. But you know, it's so easy to forget that while we're using our mobile phones, that we're generating massive amounts of data, which has to be stored someplace in the cloud. That's the first thing. And the second thing is then that climate change is a huge problem. And as I said at the outset, there's just a small window of opportunity before we reach a tipping point beyond which there's going to be no return. And to spell that out, simply, we have got to reduce our carbon emissions. So, do we have any idea what type of data is going to be stored in this centre in Ennis? And secondly, how do we deal with the need for data storage going forward if we are to continue to use our mobile phones in the manner in which we have become accustomed?
Yeah, we have had this conversation within the group. I mean, it's still early stages, so there are a lot of things that we don't know, and we haven't, you know, kind of really teased out completely what kind of data is going to be stored here. That's part of the research that we have to do. We have been kind of focusing more on the energetic consumption, but definitely what we agree is that it's not a matter of individual responsibility, as you know, isn't any green issue. It's just a matter, we think, of a demand, you know, for usage of data, that it's driven at a different level. It's not the kind of citizen level. It's not people who want to watch more cat videos. It's really just the way the need for watching videos, for example, on the internet versus reading information or just looking at a picture with text is, you know, it's a demand that it's driven from high above. To stimulate economic growth in a certain sense. So, I mean, I know that a lot of data is stored for data mining purposes. So, they need our data to be stored somewhere in order to use it. The big data companies need to be able to access the data in order to kind of tailor, for example, advertising, to the consumer and stuff like that. So that's something that the consumer doesn't control, for example. On the other hand, I mean, I remember, 10 years ago, we didn't store everything in the cloud. We would have our memory stick or our hard drive, and that was fine. It wasn't. Now, for example, the last laptop that I got, and it's a secondhand laptop, and I got it at the beginning of the year, it doesn't let me use Word on the laptop. I have to go on the cloud to use it. Is that my choice? No, it isn't. And, it's kind of really user unfriendly. It's kind of geared in a way that it kind of constantly asks me to store information on the cloud. It's a constant battle to kind of go against the way the machine is designed. So, I mean, it's an ethical question, like, really whether it's, individual responsibility that it's driving this demand, or if it comes from the industry. We think it comes from the industry, and it's really out of the hands of the consumer at the end. And, I mean, if people really had alternatives on how to spend their time, we wouldn't be glued to our screen. Like you, I use technology a lot, but then, I use it for doing this type of work.
Yes.
It's the way the world is going. But if there was, an option to kind of, use the telephone, I would probably use the telephone, and it would work, as well, if everybody was in the same. So, I mean, the way the world is changing really, I think, is out of people's control. I mean, there's a lot we can do, but there's also a lot that is not in our hands. So.
Oh, okay. So I suppose just to bring our conversation to a close, so the current status of this planning application, where is it at the moment?
So the date for making submissions was last Thursday, and that is gone. And we're happy to say that there were more than 50 submissions that were made to the council. Now, not all of them were against the data center, but we think that a good few of them were, or at least, kind of damage control kind of submissions. So questioning, the viability of the whole project. And that was, we think, a big achievement. It was accompanied by more than 200 signatures. So we're delighted that, citizens are kind of copying on the, environmental damage of the data center, because not many people know a lot about them. Now, the decision on the application will be made on the 9th of September. There's nothing we can do about them. There might be, slight modifications made to application, but we think it will go ahead. But now we think that, especially with the help of other organizations that are involved in, in kind of climate change and opposing the importation of fracked gas, it's gone on the political agenda. And once it's gone on the political agenda, then we have a bit of, space for making the point that, we don't think it's a sustainable strategy.
I know this is jumping the gun a little bit, but if it's a thing that Clare County Council grants planning permission for this data centre, can you foresee a situation whereby Future Proof Clare and a number of other groups might come together to appeal this decision?
It's a possibility. There's different strategies. See, like, with appealing and with the whole legal route, it's really off limits the normal citizens because of the costs that are involved. So, it's really designed to kind of, fly above the radar of, of common people. So, I mean, if we manage to form a coalition and to raise enough money, we'd definitely be pursuing the legal route. Otherwise, it would be more, a political battle and awareness raising among people.
Right. Okay. So if people want to find out more about this proposal to build a data centre in Clare that will consume the equivalent amount of energy as 3 counties and use millions of gallons of water, where can they find out information? And also, how can are you open to new members joining your campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. We're delighted to have new members helping out and joining and supporting us any way they can. We had a lot of people helping out during the past week, and a big thank you to everyone who jumped on board. So we have a Facebook page which is called Future Proof Clare. There's other groups as well that are involved at a national level. Let me think of some. Well, Not Here, Not Anywhere made a submission as well. Shale Must Fall is combating the importation of fracked LNG. There's a number of groups, but we can connect. If someone is interested, we can connect them with any of these groups, and do what we can and do our best.
Okay, well, Emanuela, I would like you to come back to us perhaps in mid-September when the decision is made by Clare County Council and give us an update. So in the meantime, I want to thank you very, very much. I do know a few members of Future Proof Clare, and I know that they put in a huge amount of work. I suppose coordinating your response to various issues, and I suppose a huge amount of time is spent on research. So I just want to thank you and all of your members for the work that you're all doing on a voluntary basis for no pay. So the country needs more people like you. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
To those of you who have been watching, can I make an appeal to you to please share this video, because it is the only way that we have of getting word out to a wider audience. I want to thank you so much for watching. The fact that you're still watching shows that you do care. And until we meet again, Beannacht de Arif Galer. I'm going to leave you now with a video. It's Deputy Breed Smith speaking earlier this year in the Dáil about the proliferation of data centres and the effect that they're going to have on climate change.
First of all, I think people should be aware that there's an astonishing growth in the number of data centres across the state. We currently have about 54, mostly based around Dublin. There are another 10 under construction, and planning permission has already been granted for about 31 extra. Now, that means that although the argument the government make is that they will have their own renewable energy, you're also going to see by 2030 half of the total renewables produced in this country being gobbled up by data centres. In anybody's book, that doesn't make ecological, sustainable or environmental sense. And there's also the question of water, because we can't regenerate water, but these data centres use a vast quantity of water, and we know how much of the question of water as a public resource has been at the heart of politics in this country. So I think, Minister, you should, in the first instance, begin to look at the planning legislation which allows data centres a special place as part of strategic infrastructure, which fast-tracks planning permission for them. This is getting out of control.
Thank you, Deputy.